Hey guys, and welcome to season 3 of the Us People podcast. I'm your host, GoodRx, and in this season, I get to make my guests laugh, cry, and even make them think about life a little differently with the questions I fire over to them, which digs into their lives and professions a little differently. We even had a chance to change up the intro, giving you a fresh, new sound. I look forward to sharing season 3 of the Us People podcast with you. Let's go.
Hi, my name is David Oswald, and I'm a creative director for Apple at TBWA Media Arts Lab. And you're listening to the Us People podcast with Savio Rocks. That was very radio announcer.
That was pretty cool.
Made up my mind, now is my time to shine. Now is my time to shine. Time that you let go, time that you let go, now is my time.
Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Us People podcast. I'm your host, Savio Rocks, and today I'm humbled to have David, who is a creative director for Apple at the TBWA Media Arts. David, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. How are you?
Thank you, Savia. Thanks for the invite. Lovely to speak with you.
And you too. No, that's perfect. So my first question for everyone normally is, tell me a little bit about your life and your background of where you grew up and how that influenced you as you got older to be the person who you are today.
Yeah, of course. I'll try to give you the 2-minute rundown. If that's too long or too short, free to say stop.
No, go
So
for it.
I grew up in Germany. I'm 40 years old right now. I grew up in Germany, which you'll probably pick up from the accent. I have been living in the US for the last 4 years and working for Media Arts Lab, as you said, with the only client that we have is Apple. So that's a very specific kind of agency. I grew up in, I don't want to say rural Germany, but in like a small town close to Frankfurt, which is probably the biggest city that people know.
Okay.
Right in the middle of Germany, small town, wine region. Lots of nice people. My best friends are still there, even though I haven't lived there in, I think now 15 years.
Wow.
But I grew up there, it was really nice. Basketball was my thing when I grew up.
Yeah.
School was just a side thing. So I always grew up a little bit of a US fan, America fan. And then I also started learning English from watching US late night shows.
Oh, wow.
Like on NBC Europe, I think it was called. It was like a business channel, but at night they showed like Jay Leno and Conan O'Brien, which is still one of my idols. And then I went within 2 years from being like the worst kid in the English class to like where I taught my teacher things, which is really funny, but it's just how it turned out. And then I think sort of in the same vein, we kind of got MTV at some point, I think when I was like 12, 13, 14, and then I watched Ray Coax. I don't know if he even is that famous in England, but he's really famous in German. He was like a show host, and I think like people my age in Germany, like they have a soft spot for him because we learned English from him and like what's cool in Britain and what is Blur, what is like all these cool bands and stuff. So, and I think that also when I started like watching these Levi's commercials and kind of like these kind of really great ads, and it kind of sparked something in me where it's like, what is this amazing thing that you get paid money by a brand to sit on a table? That was my naive idea, to think of stupid ideas and then fly somewhere awesome and shoot an ad. And I think that somehow stuck with me. And I think then when I finished my school, I did like an apprenticeship, what we call in Germany, where you actually work at a small ad agency, but you go to school once a week. I like a vocational training. I think that's also what you might call it. And I really enjoyed that. I really learned all the basics, like typography, Quark Express, which now would be the equivalent is InDesign, Photoshop, all these kind of things. And then I studied marketing communications, and then I ended up in Berlin, where I started as an intern, and at that time probably the best ad agency in Germany, if not in the top 5 in Europe, DDB. And I was like a small intern trying to survive on little money, little talent in many hours. But it was really like, it was honestly because the team was so awesome. Like I learned so much. And half a year in, it was about like, hey, are you gonna bring me on staff? And then they kind of said like, yeah, we kind of your art direction, and you're kind of like, it's okay, but like we're the Champions League here. But your emails are really funny. Would you consider becoming a copywriter? Because whenever you write like an email about like this and this, like it's really witty and it's funny, and it's like, and then I did like an internship as a copywriter, and that's how I turned out to sort of become a copywriter. After 3 years there, I just felt I needed to go somewhere. I really wanted to go to the US. Didn't work out with the visa because he was like a junior creative, like nobody goes through all the visa shit. And then I ended up finding out that in Australia you can just go there to pick like strawberries and bartend, and with a trick you can actually freelance in ad agencies.
That's it.
Because you just need like a tax number. But that was also 2009, where all the world was on fire and every agency was firing people. So in the end, it was a year. I think I worked like 6 weeks in 2 agencies. One was Droga 5, which always looks great in my resume, but I was there for like 2 weeks.
Hey, it's all right.
It counts. You know? And then I went back to Germany, and to kind of put the loop on, or a bow on my story, is that 2 years back in Berlin, I still had like this international kind of like, I want to work with international people. And Berlin is an international city, but it's still not that there's big brands and stuff. And I was always a huge Apple fan. And then Media Arts Lab London actually called me, inquired, and that's where I had like a really awesome run from 2012 to 14. Met a lot of awesome people, still friends with a lot of them, still colleagues now, because then I didn't go straight from London to LA, but we had a lot of stuff that in London we had to do in LA just because of security reasons and stuff. So I fell in love with LA more and more. And then 2016, I went over. I got a really funny coincidence. My former boss was here and he was like looking for somebody in his team, and I kind of lucked out to kind of chat with him at the right time. And 2 months later, I started here.
See, that's a story in itself. So
well, I think that was longer than 2 minutes, though.
Hey, it doesn't need to be 2 minutes. As long as it's a story, it's good. So tell me about how your family were towards you when you were growing up, wanting to be a creative.
I think that's a really interesting question. I think they were always really supportive. I think my dad, who's kind of who I look up to in terms of, he's a tax consultant. He's a very very hardworking guy. Like he is like, sometimes when I go to bed, he already is like writing me, because he starts working at like 6 a.m. on Sunday. Like he's a really hard worker, and I really appreciate that about him. He was not really, the funny thing is he was not like, he was, you know how you are with your son, and it's like, oh, if he wants to do that, I'll support it. It's cute, but he will never be able to live on this kind of like artsy stuff, because the money is in the money, and kind of, why don't you work for a bank or something? And and now he's kind of like, yeah, it was the right decision, David, because all of my friends or former classmates who kind of went into banking now, like, oh, what am I going to do? Because now an app can do my job.
Yeah.
And I, at least for now, still have a very good job. But I think, and my mom was always like, she's a very, I think in French you would call it laissez-faire, kind of like, she was always like, if I was 5 or 20, she was always like, you're going to do the right thing. Instinctively, you're going to do the right. I don't have to parent you, which was scary, but also very freeing in the same, like she was accidental supportive by just always letting me do what I wanted to do. And I think that just gave me the freedom to just like do things that probably a parent would never push you to do. It was like, hey, learn web design. Yeah. Because when I was like a graphic designer, I was never even a mediumly talented web designer, but it was just a thing that people wanted in like in 2000 and 1999 or something. So it's just where I made a lot of side money as like a 19-year-old of just making really, really shitty websites.
Oh, don't say that. Don't say. Look where you are now, though, compared to back then.
They were shitty half a year in, and I think if you would look back on it 20 years, you would.
Stop it. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about that, because that's definitely something I want to talk about. So how did you start getting into marketing, advertising, the strategy, the creativity, the graphic design? How did it all really develop for you?
I think there was the interest that I said was sparked by kind of this MTV when I was like 15, 16, of just like, obviously you watch MTV for the music, but in the end I was also baffled by like these kind of really awesome ads that we in Germany, you can make jokes about German, but they're all pretty much all true. It's like, we're very rational. Our ads is like, here's the new car, it's 7% better because of this, and you can get it for this price. Like like 99% of our ads are very rational and very like, here is the person telling you why this is awesome. Whereas these kind of international global ads had this magic of like, it created a story. They just threw down 500,000 rubber balls in the San Francisco streets to sell you a TV. And I was just like, this is just awesome. It just sparked an interest. And I think I was always a person that, if it is something in sport, if it is something in whatever field, like I just have an urge to at least get a grasp of it. Yeah. And I just always try to understand, like, how does this work? Like who's the person who has this idea? Is he just sitting on his table with the feet up and just one day is like, hey, why don't we do this? Why don't we have this good-looking guy jumping in the pool with his jeans, which was one of these Levi's commercials.
Yeah, I thought it was Levi's. It sounds like one of them.
Yeah, just like beautiful music, and he just jumped from pool to pool. Probably was LA even. So I was just immensely curious, and to be curious in the 90s was really shit. I think the young people who hopefully will listen to this, we didn't have the internet.
Yeah,
like
that's
you
true.
you couldn't just Google it, like, how does an ad agency work, or who made this? Like, you had to probably take a train to like a big city and see if there's a magazine that might be of some kind of, what are the big ad agencies and all those kind of things, which makes it even nicer looking back, because you worked so hard for information. Whereas right now, like, you can get to pretty much anything you want to know within like 20 minutes if you're good at working Google. But I always say I came up and I grew up at the perfect time. Like, I had to do some things by hand and the hard way, and kind of like buy a book of like the best ads of 1999 to go through it. Whereas right now, like, it's so easy that you might not appreciate sometimes like how stuff is made. Yeah. And I think that just sparked an interest. And then I think obviously there's so much luck always involved. And I was lucky that one of my best friends in school, her aunt ran an ad agency. She was like the creative director in like a town that's like 20-minute drive. They had like a local Mercedes dealership and 3 really nice other kind of brands. Like, it was a small shop, like 50, 60 people, but I had like the most awesome people around me that really took the time to like really help me. And that's one of the things, it might be one of your future questions, but I really want to point out it's so many people invested time in me when I was young that I'm always trying to pay. Is that even paying forward or like giving back? Like
paving a way for other people.
Yeah, I have sometimes people just randomly on LinkedIn write me of like, hey, I'm at this stage of my career. Would you have like a tip? Like, I love, even though it takes time out of my day, I love writing like an email, and they're always surprised how long and how much time I take. But to me, it feels like it's giving back to all the people that helped me get to where I am now. And I think that's, it also feels nice, to be honest, just like from a human level.
It does.
To like,
it does.
Maybe this maybe not helps him now, but maybe it helps her or him in half a year to have kind of that email of just like, hey, maybe try this or this. So
no, it's definitely really nice. That's one of the questions I was going to ask you actually is, could you who are the people who supported you? Is there anybody in particular who supported you and pushed you to be where you are today as a creative director?
I think I'm honestly, I think it's in 2 weeks, I'm 20 years into kind of the business itself. Because I started early because of that apprenticeship. I kind of started when I was 19, 20. Yeah, I was 20 at the time. So obviously within 20 years, it's not one person, but it's like, it's just, I always like the image of like you're standing on shoulders. Like the second person was only able to help me because I prepped myself with the help of that one first person. And I think the first person was Klaus. He couldn't get any more German in the name, but he was like the head responsible person in that small agency, and he took the time to really we worked together for 3 years, and he really like took me and shaped me like a piece of clay from like really telling me everything about typography, about the rules of what do you do with what happens with this if there's only one word at the end of this sentence, how do you make that look nice, and all these kind of things. Like he was done at work at like 6, and we sometimes stayed 2 or 3 hours to work on my projects, and he helped me, and I still to this day I'm still in contact with him, and I really, really appreciate what he's done for me back then. And I think then in the ad agency world, obviously it gets a little bit tougher in the sense of like, you also need to bring something to the table. Like you need to bring in skills, which wasn't the case when I started. When I was 20, I was like, I couldn't do anything. I knew the difference between Photoshop and whatever, but like learning everything. And then in the ad agency world, there were a lot of great senior creatives like Marian and Christian at that, and Bert and Stefan, like all these names that are really known names in German ad land. And they really took the time to like, they were tough on me, but it came from the right place, and they wanted me to get better. And I think that really helped me immensely.
Oh, wow. For people who don't understand what your role is and what you actually do as a creative director, could you break it down just so people understand the process of what you do when it comes to your task, your projects, your creativity and your ambition within what you do?
Do you mean creative director overall? Because my role at Media Arts Lab is fairly specific. Like it's a very, I'm running the localization there, which is in itself, like I'm not the person on the desk with the feet on the table who has like the big idea. I'm kind of a support system that makes sure that whatever ad we produce, that it also works in Malaysia and it works in Spain. And what are the 100 steps to get there? But overall, a creative director, I think the role is to know art direction and copywriting and kind of shape the work to what you think is the right way, like what the client thinks and what you think as well. You should always I think it's always having a really strong point of view that is based in strategy, and then kind of helping people around you to execute it. Yeah. And in my example with the localization, I have like 4 permanent members in my team. And we're just kind of like a consulting unit within the agency that just docks on to every little project and just helps from the beginning, like from the very first idea. We're part of the creative process and making sure that I always say the example, like your ad for this and this product should not be a famous baseball player talking into the camera. Like that will not work in any country outside of the US.
I like the way you said
it's just making sure, and obviously it really helps for me having worked in Europe and being German, and then also having colleagues with very interesting cultural backgrounds, because that's the way to understand this, where somebody who grew up in Los Angeles and besides a few travel experiences never really like understood what it is to speak another language, and kind of not understanding this wordplay in that headline, for instance. Like that's often is like a really funny headline, and then I'm like raising my hand and like, that's it's going to be really funny for the people in English, but that's not working.
Yeah, no,
that's
I
not
understand
working in other languages.
Oh no, that's tell me about how do you manage stress and tight deadlines? How does that work for you?
Oh, it always depends on what position I feel in, because in those kind of years that I said, like when I started in Berlin and I was like a junior and like money was tight and you were working 12, 13-hour days, I was not good at stress because you were at the end of the food chain as well. Like if like at a meeting at 7 p.m. the boss tilted the table over and kind of, this is all bleep.
Oh yeah.
I need new ideas by tomorrow 10 a.m. That means you needed to help your creatives as much as you can as an intern and like kind of support them. And it took its toll. Like I'm always very honest about this. Like those years were also really hard on me. But it also shaped me. So I would always do it again. And I also recommend people to go through that, but also be aware of like, don't put too much on yourself, but you need to test your boundaries. And I think I am at a stage in my career where I have a little bit more control of how, when, and the art of working. And I think that really helps me to deal with the stress, because I think it's not only advertising. I think it's all creative disciplines. If you're in photography, even more, or if you're in video making, there is stress because you need to deliver. The client books you to perform.
Yes, that's true.
And I think there is ways of handling stress without being an amplifier of it. And I think I'll try to be a manager that is not getting yelled at, and I'm yelling then to my people with a 20% increased intensity, because to me, that's not how I like to work. And I think, for one, I feel I want to save this for when it's like really go time. And you shouldn't like always be on your toes. And I think in the end, it's also self-care of like, make sure I have a dog, which is a really great excuse to go on walks in the morning, in the evening. And I think we made the joke in the beginning, like, be organized, because if you're not organized, other people will organize you, and that to me leads to stress. Like, I want to know what my schedule is like, what are the big things I need to deliver in the next 3 days, because there's always the surprise email that really ruins my next 2 hours. But if I know that I can jump on it and nothing will fall off the table, that gives me less anxiety than if I'm not on top of things.
Definitely.
And I sometimes, to be honest, have these mornings where, because of the time difference, you're like waking up to 37 emails.
Oof.
And half of them are like, can you please reply really fast while we're still awake in Asia or London and whatever.
Yeah.
And that can really like shake up your day, and that then I get stressed. But I think just in terms of overall anxiety and stuff, I think I just got a lot better in the last 15 years of just being aware, taking work really serious, but not... I think I figured out, if you take it too serious, it doesn't really help the work. If you get too like, if you treat everything like, oh, if this banner for this Pinterest ad in Spain for this really semi-important thing, if that is like 2 hours late, so be it. I wouldn't say that out loud. I do it on a podcast though. But I think just being aware that your work is important, but I'm also not a heart doctor or somebody helping. Like I'm not the most important person on the planet by far.
Because everyone's important.
Yeah, but important, but in the sense of like, if I do this the correct way, it might be 15 minutes late, but I think everybody has a nicer way of making, and it maybe helps us to get the other thing done on time.
That's true.
Just seeing like the bigger picture helps me to not get too stressed.
Okay. I like that. What excites you about doing a new project in advertising or campaigns? What excites you to say, this is something that I love and I want to do it?
I think on the really, like, if I really step back, I think it's this 15-year-old kid that was sitting in Germany and is like, oh, I wish I would know how these ads are made and kind of how this works, and that must be really fun. I think that's the bigger picture thing of reminding yourself, like, I'm working for Apple, which is a brand that I've loved for 25 years, when like people were making jokes about me, like, why do you have like this round iMac thing? Like, it can't do anything. It doesn't even have what was it, like the small disk, hard disk, floppy disk.
Oh, the floppy disk.
Yeah, it didn't have a floppy disk, and people were making jokes about this. And I think it's just working on something that you really believe in. I think that's so, because in my time in advertising, I worked on, I don't want to say the brand names, but stuff that they like 2 hours working on it. Like, you're just like, this is like a really useless product. It's bad for the environment. It's not helping anybody. It's just like a big conglomerate trying to sell something. And then being able to work on something that I'm generally always obviously also excited to know about, things kind of like, oh, this is like, it's all things that I in the end also really want. Like in 2 months, and it's like, I'm going to queue up to buy this. Like, I obviously that really helps, but I think on a more level close to the work, it's just working with really talented people, and people that are working so hard is just so, it gives you energy of just like,
it does.
People that believe in the bigger cause. We're not bullshitting each other. Obviously there's days where it's just like, why am I doing this job? Like, every job has this. I think a world-class football player has this, a CEO has these kind of days, but I think it's just working on that's my dog.
Hey, dog.
Hope that wasn't I think it's just, for one, working in something that you really believe in, and you don't have to lie to yourself.
Yeah.
And then just having people around you, from people that have done this for 20, 30 years and are the best in the business. But then also what I love about our agency is like these young people that are straight out of college. Yeah. And I don't know how they find them, but they're smart, they're humble, they're great. And they're like, they pull these all-nighters that I did 15 years ago, and I couldn't anymore, but they're writing emails at 2 a.m. and then the next morning they're laughing in the video conference, or when we were in real offices, they were smiling. Like, it's that gives me energy of just like, we're one fucking team and we're not fighting against each other, which I sometimes I hear stories of companies or ad agencies where the people are like working against each other, and that's just
that happens a lot.
I could not work like this. And that's why I'm always very grateful that is very little of it.
Yeah. I need to come out to LA if there's less of that, because there's a lot of that here.
I think it's everywhere, and maybe I'm also not seeing it, and maybe I'm blind. I'm turning a blind eye, but I think overall we're a very good agency in terms of just like not wasting energy of fighting against each other. It's like there's tough conversations on talking on ideas, and obviously if clients say something and you don't agree, like it gets your blood boiling. But I think we're not wasting energy on the wrong things. Yeah.
How is it for you when a client says they have an idea and they would like it to be like this, but then you have an idea and you want it to be like this, but then the client more wants it their way, but you know that your way would work better? How does that work in getting the ideas across so that the client gets the best from you, I should say?
I'm gonna explain this more in like, not in my current job situation, but sort of like an overall thing of my last 10, 15 years. I think you should fight for your ideas. And I had a very famous boss in my first job in Berlin who was kind of known to be like a warrior and kind of in the press and towards clients, like really fighting for the ideas. And it really helped like us as creatives to like pull these all-nighters, because you know that not the first kind of negative thing from client leads him to like, then I'm not going to even present that idea because it's very edgy. Like, you wanted to feel that your boss believes in your ideas. But to be honest, I'm also I don't know if pragmatic is the right word, but I am aware that the person that we call client is in the end the person that pays us to do the right thing, which to me, like, I shouldn't override his decision all the time, because it's in the end, like, it's his money, it's his budget, it's his account that we have. Like, I used to freelance, and I treated every job like this. Like, I'm showing you what I think is right, and I'm also sometimes overriding your opinion and telling you, no, I really believe in that part, and I'm going to fight for this. But the final say, I know, and I believe the client has the final say, and in the end, they're the people paying for it.
That's true. Yeah.
But I also am aware that either me or the ad agency or the freelance team that I'm part of, that they booked us for a reason, because they liked what we've done in the past, which gives me a permission to not, like, I don't want to call it being a pushover. Like, I'm fighting for the ideas, but there is a way of fighting too much. And I think I always want to be smart, and you could call that political or kind of pragmatistic, whatever the judgmental word is. But I think to me, that's just the business I am. Like, I'm not an artist. An artist is somebody who does things because they have the vision, it's their money, or they get sponsored, and then they do it.
Yeah.
But I'm a creative that's hired by somebody, either as a freelancer, as a single person, or as a team, and then I'm there for the bigger cause, and that bigger cause is not always what I want or my vanity wants, because I want to win a Cannes Lion, and I think doing this stunt will get me there.
What would you say to your 18-year-old self? If your 18-year-old self was in front of you, what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self wanting to go into the same industry you're in now?
It's a really good question, and I think it's... the thing is, a lot of things that I would want to say is... if I would say this to my 18-year-old self, he couldn't experience it himself. Do you know what I mean? Like, if I would say, like, what I always say to, like, junior people when I don't want to call it mentor, but when, like, somebody reaches out on LinkedIn and asks me a question, is like, things are never as bad or never as good as they seem.
Yeah.
And I think when you're young, you're over-indexing a little bit of, like, oh, I got this job offer from this, and you're, like, on this high for, like, weeks, and there's, like, oh, this thing didn't work out. I'm, like, the most desperate person, and I'm, like, crying for weeks.
Aww.
But I think if I would say that to myself, it is interesting, but I think some things you just have to experience and go through.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, it's really hard.
It's a life experience that you have to go through.
You can't give experience by words. I think you can guide people, but I think it's, to me, and what I always try to say is, like, if I would tell my 18-year-old self, like, you're gonna live in LA, which is really nice city, really nice weather, you're gonna have a gorgeous wife. I'm just gonna say that in case she listens to the podcast, but it's very true. Yeah, I'm gonna make her. And you, like, everything from the outside, and I'm a very grateful person. Like, it would be almost unrealistic to my 18-year-old self, like, you're going to be there, because it was so many small steps. And I think it's what I see in young people is always like, oh, I want to work at this agency, and I want to become this title, and I want to have this nameplate on this kind of building. And I think that's not, you can have that as a lofty goal, like somewhere in a locker box, but I think it's go step by step, because there were so many steps in my career that at the point looked like a step back, or like a defeat. Like when I told you earlier, when I went to Australia, and I was like, for 4 months, I was like walking around Sydney, because I was running out of money. I was walking around Sydney with USB sticks that I bought for like $9, and went to every ad agency that I could find in the phone book. It's just like, hey, I'm going to work for you, even first week for free, and all. Like, that was a really, really hard time for me. But I think in the end, it really helped me to work in a English-speaking country.
Yes.
It really helped me to handle defeat and kind of rejection.
Yeah.
If you're applying at 40 agencies and none of them even say no, thank you, it really hardens you. But and that's what I mean. Like it's all these small steps that you kind of have to do. So the thing that I would probably say is like see the bigger picture and don't get disencouraged by if the current half year looks like a step back or you're not progressing.
I always say to people that the small things make the big things happen. So so that's
and
kind
I think
of
this famous Chinese proverb, like a journey of 1,000,000 miles starts with a step, or something like that. I'm totally ruining that, but I think that is true, which doesn't mean that every step is in the right direction, but just do it and start it.
If I gave you £1 billion, he's laughing already, to spend on a campaign that could change the world forever, what campaign would you do, or would you think of doing, and why?
Did you say million or billion?
Billion.
That is a lot.
That's a lot of money, and you have to use all of it.
I was not expect to work on the weekend. Now I have to come up with an idea.
So I'm just giving you. So if I gave you £1 billion to spend on a campaign that could potentially change the world and the way people view the world forever, what would your campaign be about, and why would you choose that particular campaign to put forward?
I think the large sum throws me off. It's so much money. But I think what I'm always really, and I told you earlier, I'm a curious person, is like, I think I would make the campaign just top of my mind about the true cost of stuff. Because I think there's so many things in the world that we as humans don't really, and I think it's just showing people of like, if you're using plastic cutlery, which is the thing that drives me mad in the US, because even when people eat at home, they use like plastic plates and plastic cutlery, and it's just driving me mad. I don't know. They say, oh, it's like LA doesn't have enough water, I don't want to wash my dishes. And they're just lazy. So it's all these things of like, I eat meat, but I'm trying to eat less, like just showing people what is the true cost of having an animal in this kind of tight shelter. It's all these things that are wrong in the world, and I think it's because people are either turning a blind eye or are not aware of what the true cost of everybody having a huge car is. Obviously, I have family in Germany. I visit them once a year. I fly. I don't feel great about this. And I think there's so many things in the world where, and another thing is like somebody dropped an Amazon package here. Like I'm using Amazon 24-hour delivery, which is a really, really big waste of stuff because it's way less efficient than if you're getting it once a week. Yeah. And I think it would just be educating people on these kind of things, which in the end all is about like global warming, which scares me a lot.
Yeah, it definitely does.
Because you gave me $1 billion, I would make it a very large thing that touches on many
I think
things.
I would document it. I think I would come with my cameras and just literally document you from start to finish. So from when I give you the 1 billion to your process of how you think about it, and when you scream when you get it.
I hope you kept some money to have a really good camera crew and.
Oh no, don't worry. I've got that down. Don't worry about that. You know. So I'll creatively guide them. You know.
Nice.
So they'll be around you, and then see how you do your campaign. And I always love to see the finishing project, the end. Yeah.
And how much I pocketed myself of that $1 million as a consulting fee.
Oh, do you mean the billion? Oh, okay. Yeah, well, hey, I'm sure you'll deserve it by the end of it. It's not how much money you have, is what you do with the money that counts. So that's definitely one of the things. My next question for you is, how do you view education? That's one of the things that I've always loved to ask people, because a lot of people have gotten to where they have been their title or position through talent. And some people have gone the education route. But do you feel that talent is enough to get you to where you need to be? How are your views on education and how important or not so important compared to talent education actually is?
Is for you the definition of education, is it like institutions, like schools and universities, or is it like, to my earlier example of like the person in my first agency sitting with me for 2 hours in the evening? Because to me that also...
That's education, but that's grooming you in a way where you're also using your talent as well to listen and understand and become better at who you are as a person and what you do. So they both can be defined in different ways. So you can use that as education if you want to.
I think talent obviously is, if you have a calculation and you have two multipliers, I think talent obviously, if that number is really high, that helps a lot. But I think if then the drive and education side, if that number is like really low, I don't think talent gets you far. Like, I think the world is too advanced. If you think about sports, for instance, like I'm a huge basketball fan, but I also know a lot about soccer or football. It's played with a foot. Let's call it football. I think none of the players that you see on TV got there only because of talent. And I think it's the same in business and advertising and all of these creative industries that, and you see it on YouTube. There's so many people that, and you can see their trail of like that their first video sucked. And then like 3 years later, they have like a successful cooking show or a tech reviewer. I don't know if you know MKBHD, like he's a fairly famous, like if you look, like he was a 14, 15-year-old kid with a shitty camera and doing these videos. And now he's built an empire. And obviously there's talent there, but because he reinvested his money that he made into better equipment, he learned to do this. He learned to do this. And I think in this equation that I talked about, to me, drive and education, which I would put on the one side, is way more important than talent.
Yeah.
Which doesn't mean like there needs to be some kind of talent, because I think most of the jobs these days are so specific, and so you need some kind of thing. Let's call it thing. Because otherwise there's nothing to amplify. But I think to me, drive and education, I would put in that bucket, is the big amplifier. And I think you need that. Yeah,
I agree with you there. What is the one question that people should ask you about your career but never really do?
About my career or about their career?
About your career. So say, what's the one question out there that people should ask you but never really do ask you? Is there a question that stands out for you that you wish people would ask you but they don't really ask you?
I think I hinted at it earlier. It's like, obviously people are also like socially not trained to ask these kind of questions, but like, what was your failure? What was like, where did you really screw up? Where, like, because I think in a CV or on LinkedIn, like I think so many careers look just like, so polished and so clean, and it's like every step makes so much sense, like looking back. But I think and I'm also, it's never the first question, but I think a really deep conversation is about, like, with friends or people that you barely know, is like those kind of socially unacceptable questions of like, where did you fail? Like, where did you screw up? What was your biggest regret? And all these kind of things.
So my next question for you would be that.
Yeah. So I think it is really interesting to kind of like, to learn from people. Is like, even though she or he, like, they made it that far, they had this 1.5 year where they did the completely wrong thing and now they regret. And if you're asking me what my biggest regrets, or kind of like, I'm such a shitty, optimistic person that I say, even when I always talk about my year in Australia, which was like a really rough year, but it helped me so much to deal with those kind of things. I think in the end, it's sometimes choices you make because of vanity, of just like, there was like in my first big agency DDB, where we had the sexy Volkswagen account, like anything done on that account was like, just like, it won awards, everybody loved it, and it's just like, I was like, I want to work on this, and I did. But it also means that it's the most crowded field, and obviously the best people work there. And I think it's not really answering your question with the regret, but I think one tip that I would give people is always like, go to the pitch that's not crowded. Go to the court where there's nobody playing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I then took on like German Rail. Like, nobody wanted to work on it, but as a junior copywriter, I was like, my senior person was happy that I just like, I can trust him. He's organized. He will he will do everything. So I was kind of, I was growing into a more senior role because I took that on. And maybe my regret is not understanding that a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Because your vanity, and you're kind of like, I want to do the Nike commercial. I want to do, and that's why these brands are also very successful, because the best people are like scratching their eyes out to work for them.
Yeah.
And that's obviously the magic. But I think to really hone your skills and get better at it, I would always tell young people, work on that little thing, like, you know, where your CD is kind of like really happy that you do it for him, like, because nobody wants to do it. And if you're the people doing it, if you're the person doing it with a smile, that's just going to give you, it's just going to give you points, and maybe the next time it's going to help you.
See, if your campaign had a superpower, it's a silly question. If your campaign had a superpower, what superpower would your campaign have? And what campaign would you have in the first place in order for it to have a superpower?
I think I'm a little bit too cynical about advertising to even ask for a superpower, because it's already I think advertising is not working as good as we hope in advertising, but it's working better than for the goodness of the planet sometimes, because we always want the newest car and the shiny new things. Superpower.
What's your favorite superpower?
Sorry?
What's your favorite superpower? If you had a
realistic
superpower,
one, or kind of like a movie kind of superpower?
Hey, no, you can list one.
I find honesty. It may be the campaign, like just honesty. I find people underestimate the power of honesty.
That's true.
Just like,
that is true.
at a certain point saying the honest thing and not the thing that the other person
just wants to hear.
Wanted to hear. And that doesn't mean to be like being rude or whatever, but it's just like, just saying something that's, I don't know if blunt, I think blunt is the English word of just like,
that's the one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like hitting you. And I think maybe that's also the superpower for the campaign, where it's like, we're like at the end of the campaign, I still think TV spots, which shows you how old I am. I'm not thinking about like Snapchat AR filters and stuff, but I think it's just something where you just watch something for 60 or 30 seconds, and at the end is like, you're just hit with the truth, and it's like, oh wow, that's just awesome. And I think it's not an unrealistic superpower. It's not a Marvel movie superpower, but I think just honesty.
Honesty is a superpower. It's a great superpower to have. I wish more people had that.
We all have it, but
it's filtered within us somewhere. It doesn't come out.
We're taught to hide it.
Yes.
By getting more adult.
How do you accomplish your goals? What is your mindset when it comes to accomplishing goals?
I think I'm always paralyzed when my goals are too large.
Why? Is that not you just having high expectations?
No, it's just, when you're hiking in the Alps or somewhere like, and you're just seeing that very large mountain, and if somebody says we're gonna hike this, I'm the person who's like, really? Like, I think I'm gonna stay here in the hotel. Whereas if we're going to like the first hill, and then the mountain is closer, and I think that's how I like to work, and that's how I'm hacking my procrastination as well. Like, I'm a big procrastinator, which a lot of people don't believe, but I'm not saying it because it's a cool word, but I need to break things into digestible things that I can do within the next 2 days or 2 hours, to have that kind of feeling of like, I did this step, and then I have this, I think the word is inertia, like my lazy body and my lazy mind is already moving, and then I'm just like, and that's how I often get myself to do like night shifts of, I'm doing a side project right now that like I'm really procrastinating about, but sometimes I'm like, I think we call it the zone, and I think it's a lot of people, like if you're just, your wife asks you like, when are we going on the couch and watching Netflix, and you're like, I just want to finish this, like where it's just coming out of you. And I think back to your question with the goals, I think I have bigger goals, but I think I'm always best if I have a goal that I can achieve in the next day or week.
Yes.
So it needs to be kind of a sub goal of the bigger one, because if I'm always only looking at the larger one, I'm paralyzed by like, and I think Bill Gates once said, like, you're always you're overestimating what you can do in a year, but you're underestimating what you can do in 10 years.
Yeah. See?
And I think it's this kind of, it's like people are impatient. You want, like, I want this done tomorrow. But I think if you break it into smaller things, you're surprised what you can do in like a month.
Yeah, that's true. That's really true. What are you most proud of that you stand for?
Whew, you're really digging here. I would say that I always appreciate hearing that people like working with me.
Okay.
Which is I think it's a little bit vain and a little bit like your own ego, but I think I'm always trying to create a environment where people are allowed to make mistakes, where people are allowed to have their opinion, where I'm not forcing it upon them, or because I always feel whatever creative business you're in, the way it is made is inside the DNA of what's out there. I think you can't make a funny thing in a group that's very grim and hates each other.
Yeah, that's true.
That might be wrong, and there might be a lot of examples where that's not true, but I always want to create an environment where people feel like they can do their best work.
Yeah.
And that's what I think proud is the word when I'm hearing is like, hey, David, that was a really great project, and we really achieved this, and without stabbing each other, and kind of we really supported each other. And even if it's me, just a small thing that I contributed to this, I'm always proud. Obviously, I'm also proud of like our agency's output and awards you're winning.
Yeah.
That is great. But I think in the end, it's like you can get to a goal many different ways. And I always find, even if it's for me like 5% harder, to find the way where the group has a better path to succeed, and has I don't even want to call it fun, but just like you feel an inner happiness of just like how we've done that. I think that makes me proud if I hear that.
I like that. What's the best advice you've ever received from somebody?
Ooh. Can you edit my 30-second pause?
Of course you can. Yeah, go for it. Yeah. No, you think. I'll wait.
I think it's this, like, things are never as bad or as good as they seem. Like, people and I also tended to live on these like, now it's really bad, now it's really good. And I think if you're trying to level yourself a little bit towards the middle, I don't even know who said this, and I think it's probably called stoicism, of like not being so led by external forces. You know, if things are hectic and whatever, I always try to like, what can I do in this moment? It's like, yes, the world might be on fire, but maybe if I put this fire out here, we can get somewhere. And I think it's not a smart thing that's hanging on my wall, but I think it's this: things are never as bad as good as they seem. So don't overreact on the extremes.
What would you do differently if nobody was judging you?
I think I'm fairly free of working in thinking that I'm judged. Because I can tell you the story that I came to LA 4 years ago, and then half a year in, our agency had a restructure and I lost my job. which obviously, if you come with a visa, is like a really scary thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's, again, is one of the things where it's like, that was a defeat and it was like really, really bad. It's a long and funny story how I sort of stayed on, but it also really helped me to really, in that I kept working for the agency because I had to wait for the green card to arrive.
Yeah.
So then they could let me go, which reset my thinking of how I want to work. So I really worked how I think is the right way of doing. I didn't do it because this person told me to do it that way, or my boss had this opinion about it. I just had the freedom, and it was a scary time, and I definitely don't want to go back to that, because it's like, I need to leave the country within 30 days if this doesn't work out. But it gave me the permission, or I decided to not work judged by external things, but I just want to do the right thing. And I believed if I do that, it will, or I said, if the situation doesn't get better, then so be it. I still did the right thing. And looking back, I totally did the right thing because it kept me in the job. And now I'm even like the head of the whole department, where I was like 2 levels down at that time. So it's just a funny thing how that turned out.
When was the last time you felt total peace within yourself?
Total? I don't want to say. I don't think you ever feel total peace. I would be scared to feel that, because it's like the perfect cup of ice cream. It's like it's gonna be gone in 2 hours. It's like I think you always want something that like you want to work on, but I think. What I don't know if I can attribute it to California, which is, to be honest, a really nice place to live. And compared to, I lived in London, I lived in Berlin, like it's busy, larger cities. And obviously LA is crazy large, but there's so much nature. Like we have a garden, like I feel being close to the ocean, stupid thing, having a dog. I never had a dog before. And it's just, I'm in a really great relationship with my wife. We have a wonderful house. I think it's gratitude. I feel a lot. And we have this kind of, me and my wife, we both work at home right now, which I think probably the whole world still does. Yeah. I'm in my home office that you see, but the podcast listeners don't. And my wife is 2 dry walls that way, and she's working for Google. So we're like kind
of serious?
So we're competing companies divided by 2 doors. Oh, wow. And we're really busy in the week, but because of that, we're really, really good at using our weekends of just like, before we recorded this, we went on a 2-hour walk towards the beach, which is very cliche, but it really sets you up to kind of win the weekend. And just like Sunday night, not dreading that it's Monday, but just like, I had a really nice weekend, 5 days to go, roll your sleeves up, and then it's Friday again. We also had like a really nice dinner, socially distant yesterday. So it's those moments where it doesn't need, and the world is far from perfect right now, but I think it's this gratitude of the things you have. And it can be very simple things, if it's just a walk in the evening that we always try to do, even in the week. And even if we have to go back to our desks at like 8 for 1 more hour, I think it's this, you can find gratitude and awesomeness on this planet in so many things, of just like go out in nature, which obviously is harder if you're in the city, but even London, I found the parks, and there's so many. I lived close to Victoria Park, and I always loved going there.
Yeah, I know Victoria Park because I'm in Notting Hill Gate. So
nice.
Yeah, so it's not too bad. It's I always go for walks in Portobello.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's always nice down there, and especially now because it's so warm. Well, it's raining today, but it's still really warm. So
humid.
Yeah, it's that humid.
You're in the jungle now.
Yeah, no air at all. my computer's crashing on me, all those type of things. So it's one of those things. But yeah, what advice would you give to someone looking to go in a similar field as you?
I think I said it earlier. I think I was lucky with the time I got in. I think times were a little bit more simpler, of just like you had some print ads, you had some TV ads, and you could just get really good at doing this. I think people these days, like young junior creatives, the expectations, what they need to be able to do is a lot higher. And I have a lot of respect for them when I see their portfolios and kind of like what they're able to do at their kind of age. I think the advice is, yes, go for that job in a big agency, but mainly for the people and the brands you're able to work on.
Yes. But
I think if I look at myself, like 2000, where I wanted to go in advertising, there was no other real way of creative outlet. If you want to get in that business because of the creative outlet, do something like you're doing. You're doing a podcast.
Yeah.
You probably couldn't have, or it would have been really harder for you 15 years ago to have a radio show.
That's true.
But technically, you were having a radio show, you're having professional equipment. Like, I think with phones in our pockets, not only the ones from Apple, also from all the other awesome device makers,
I like that you said that.
you can make awesome short films. You can. And I always love when I see in a portfolio or like a website of a junior creative of like they're doing stuff on the side and not always waiting to be in the perfect position in their ad agency to do this. It's like, you don't need a film crew that costs £120,000 a day to shoot this anymore. That was the case 20 years ago. Now you can do a documentary about your uncle who goes bowling with his friends. Like, and there's so many awesome things out there. And I think my advice would be find that agency job, because I think it really helps you to be organized, to understand what brands do and all these kind of things, but don't rely on that will be your creative outlet. It's great if it is, but start a podcast, start a YouTube channel, do something that you're passionate about. Like my friend, he built a mouth guard that he can attach a phone to, and then he started making a cooking show.
Wow, that's cool.
Because the new phones have this wide angle.
Yes. And
it just looks awesome. And the first time he sent it to me, I didn't believe that it was shot on a phone. And it's like, that's stuff for like $100, like a microphone and whatever he needed to buy, and he has like a cooking show. And I think that those are the things of like, do that. Whatever urge you have, get out there. It's cheaper and easier than ever.
See, I love that, guys. See, that's optimism. See, and you were talking about optimism earlier on. So
sorry, can I interrupt you? Because you're like, why did you start that podcast? Was it like this kind of, was it like I wanted to do something like this, or what was the urge there?
Basically what it was is I've always loved helping people. When I was younger, it's a similar story actually with your friend. I asked for a camera when I was younger. My family couldn't afford to buy me a camera. So as I got a bit older, my friend had a camera. He lent me his camera. And what I did is long story short, is he gave me his camera. I went out and found jobs with his camera. I saved the little money I had until I was able to buy my own camera. I gave him
Awesome.
his camera back, and then I started, doing photography, which is what I do, professional photographer. And any money that I would get, I would save, or more. Each time I would save, I'd buy better equipment until I was able to afford a pro camera. And then one day I realized that I was sitting down and I thought, I want to help people because there's so many people in the world. It was just ironic, pandemic happened. And that's when I decided to start a podcast just before, because I put out my first podcast in February. And ironically, I said to myself, no one's really helping people as much as they should, unless I'm just not seeing it.
Yeah, no, you're totally right.
And people were asking questions of, I don't know how to get into this industry. I don't know how to talk to people. I don't know how to network. I don't know what equipment I should buy. And when I started doing my research about podcasting, there were three main factors that I found out. Which one was anybody who had a podcast was, I just want to get celebrities on my show so I can get good ratings. It's true. Two.
Which you obviously don't want because you have me on.
Don't say that. No, don't say that. Two was you're gonna make me laugh. Two was people. It was just about me, myself, and I. And three was kind of more because people were doing podcasts because everybody else was doing a podcast, and I didn't want to go down that route. My route was purely to educate people on being able to let them know that you are capable of doing anything that you want to do, regardless of your home life situation or what you may be going through, because we're all going through something. And that's my main reason for starting a podcast, really.
And that's what I like about you, is like it shows the path of how people. It's like looking back, it might look like a straight staircase that they went, but everybody went down a wrong road at one point.
Yeah, we all go down different pathways. Our pathways kind of mold us into the people who we become and want to be. But life is about choices. The choices you make impact your future. So that's kind of how I how I started the podcast.
No, it's a great idea.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. So jumping into the next one.
Yes.
What is the fundamental mistake that you feel people in your industry, creative industry, make?
Overall
Mistake that people make in the industry that you're in.
I think, and I think it's not something you can blame people on, but I think it's often people are stuck in their position within the whole machine. Is like, I think this is the thing that we should do.
Yeah.
And totally creatives are probably the worst at this, of like I want to make that funny poster, and it's like, we're doing an ad about this, like this doesn't, like we need to educate people on this, like it doesn't make sense to have a funny poster on Piccadilly Circus, like we need to do this. And I think I think I always work best when I looked at the bigger picture and try to understand what is the whole thing we're trying to achieve, and not what is my task in this. Like if my task is to write the funny headline, that headline is better if I understand the whole thing. Like what is the strategy guy trying to do? What is the account person trying to do? So I think it goes back a little bit more into that, what I earlier said, like the vanity, and just like, it's not thinking about like what I want to get out of this. This campaign is not for you. It's made for the brand to be famous, not for you to be famous. There is often a chance for both to be true, but it's not about you.
Oh, that makes sense to me. That definitely makes sense to me. Define what success means to you, because everybody has a different definition of what success means to them. But what does success mean to you as an individual?
I think first is not doing something that you don't really want to do. I think that's the first step on that pyramid, which a lot of people are forced, like in the sense of like they need to earn money. That's why they have to do this, which I don't judge people for it. And a lot of people have to do things that are not cool and whatever. But I think to me, success is doing something that you believe in, that you feel is also the right thing, which obviously Apple is the largest company in the world. Like this is not like a charitable cause that I'm working for. But I think it's also like just creating relationships and working with people where after a year, or like people are like, oh, we did a great thing together, and it was like I learned something, and we did it the right way. Yeah. Because there's always a shortcut. There's always like doing it yourself instead of teaching the person next to you. There's always I don't really need to craft this kind of copy because it's only on the third page in that flyer and nobody's going to read that. And I think to me, success is caring I always love the word care, of just like really caring. Like, you're not the person that needs to be pushed to care about the details, but like you're the one really caring about stuff.
I like that.
And to me, that's success. And I think obviously success overall as a human, I define by having a great relationship with my friend, with my wife, with my family, being obviously right now the world is on fire and I'm in a very fortunate position to still have a job, and I'm very grateful for that. But to also be in a position to, if something would happen like this to me, that I'm not like a week in, like, oh, my money's going to run out. Because obviously the American way is to spend every dollar that you have on fancy things. And it's very tempting to live here because a lot of nice cars, a lot of nice clothes, and everything is very hedonistic, I think, in LA. But to my earlier point, if you drive 2 hours into the mountains, you can get away from it. And then happiness is just hiking and just being out in nature. And I think that's in the end my happy place. Is I don't have that dream of just I want to be 60 and then I don't have to work ever again. I'm going to work really hard until I'm 60 and then I never have to work again. I'd rather be in a position where I'm like at 50 I can work a little bit less. Like, I'm at a good position, I can work a little bit less and hopefully have kids and at some point grandkids. To me, that's kind of success, and having time. And not be a person that's like driven to be like the richest person or the most successful, and thereby not being successful because you're getting divorced and nobody around you likes you.
Oh,
to me, that's not success.
Yeah, that makes what's the ultimate goal for you in life? I know we just spoke briefly about goals and people. What is your ultimate goal in life? Is your ultimate goal what we just said, or is there something else where you can say, if you get to 60, you can absolutely relax? Is there, you want to have your own enterprise, or what is your
that
ultimate
I don't know.
goal?
Sometimes that scares me to a certain degree, like that.
Why?
I don't know what I want to do in 5 or 10 years, because my old me would want a plan of like, where do I need to go? But I think it's living in the US taught me to not be too German and kind of like have like a timetable of like, in 7 years I'm going to be this, to then be able to do this. I think it's obviously work hard and be prepared for certain things, but the world is way too 3-dimensional or 15-dimensional to even like, you can't plan right now like what your job is going to be in 15 years. You don't know. I feel my business is not going to be taken over by computers getting smarter and smarter, but it's already changing because of it.
Yeah.
Because we can do things that we couldn't 2 years ago. So I think it would be very naive for me to say like, here is my plan. Yeah. But I think where I want to be is in a position where I honed my craft, I honed my skills, that I'm in a position to always be able to add value, if it's for a brand, if it's for an ad agency, if it's my own thing. I think work is a nice thing, and I think if I had to stop working, I would miss it. Yeah. As much as you curse about your work sometimes, imagine not having it, and then you would then find something that in the end will probably look like your work again a few weeks later, because like you kind of missed it. So I just want to be in a position where I can also decide how much I want to be busy and torture myself with stuff.
Oh dear. My final question for you, David, is where can everyone find you on social media, and if anyone wants to get in contact with you?
I'm always trying to be first and get David Oswald as my username. So you can find me on Instagram. I'm not on Facebook because that has become a minefield of right-wing nuts and whatever. So I don't want to participate in that anymore. But LinkedIn is probably the best way if you're like a young creative. Doesn't need to be in advertising, and you just... He rambled on forever, but he had a few nice bits in there, so maybe I just want to ask him a question. I'm more than happy to do that. And what else? Instagram. I'm probably on some social medias that don't exist anymore or don't But yeah, Instagram is probably, and email is mail@davidoswald.com.
Cool, perfect.
Besides LinkedIn.
That's where I found you. So there you go, guys. I found David on LinkedIn, and he responded back to me, and I was surprised. I was like, oh, cool. That's so cool. David, I want to thank you so much for coming on the Yes People podcast. You've been a beautiful guest, and thank you for all your knowledge, wisdom, and kindness on the podcast. Thank you so much.
I hope there was some in between.
Oh, there was everything in between, which makes it a great podcast. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for listening to the Yes People podcast. Please remember you can subscribe to Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, and any other platform that you prefer to listen to. Please also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also donate to the Yes People podcast by simply going to the Savvy Rocks website or simply typing in paypal.me/Us People podcast. Thank you for listening. Stay happy, stay positive, and as always, please continue to be kind to one another.
Now's my time, now's my time, time to let it go. Now's my time, now's my time, time to let it go. Now is the time for me to focus. Stop all that playing hocus pocus. Stop doing it yourself. You need a little help. This time I wanna see you shining. You need a little guidance. You want to feel alive.
No, it's great. I always catch myself sometimes like having 3 things in my brain and I want to tell them at the same time, and then I open a sentence within a sentence, but I hope it wasn't too bad.
Sometimes you need to say, I'm gonna be okay. Okay. Made up my mind, now is my time to shine. Now is my time to shine. Time that you let go, time that you let go. Now is my time to shine. Now is my time to shine. Now is my time to shine. Time that you let go, time that you let go. Now is my time to shine. Time to let it go. Now is my time. Now is my time. Time to let it go. Now is my time. Now is my time. Time to let it go. Now is my time. Now is my time. Time to let it go. You are your own worst enemy. Thinking too far, what's ahead of me? One day at a time. Just enjoy the ride. Open those eyes, see the light. Ignite that fire inside it. Let it breathe breath into life. Push all your fears to the side. Control your mind, it's all alright. Enjoy your life, the joy is mine. Commit to you, you got the tools. Everything you do, you make the rules. Sometimes you need